So it has come to my attention that my previous video saying that I belong to the Cherokee Peepees made some people upset. And so I'm sorry that you're such a baby.
You know, I've had some time to think about this a little bit, and I wanted to talk about something that really brings up a much deeper conversation. And I'm not going to address this person specifically. The moment I saw this person licking bird poop off of a window, bruh, they have other things. I think there's some legitimate mental illness going on here in this video. However, I think it does bring up a bigger conversation that we have been, as Indigenous people, talking about for a long time that has been met with some very stiff resistance over the years. And I'm thinking that maybe this is a good way to bring that to the consciousness of people who maybe are not thinking about this the way that we are. Unfortunately, we live in a society where this type of behavior is not only accepted, but in a lot of spaces, this type of behavior is encouraged. The use of Indigenous imagery has been a widespread problem. We see it a lot with certain products, with businesses. We see it across the board. I remember growing up and watching the show Gumby. In the show Gumby, I remember him going to the pesky Indian reservation.
Well, Pokey, this is the road to the gold country. Yeah, but we're passing right through the pesky Indian reservation. I'd like to look a little longer. My scalp, mane, is just fine where it is.
Come on, Pokey. Bring the Geiger counter and follow us.
What good would this old Geiger counter do against those savages?
I remember watching Bugs Bunny shooting Indians and keeping track of how many he killed with check marks while singing the song One Little, Two Little, Three Little Indians.
1 little, 2 little, 3 little Indians.
This type of behavior is not abnormal. And I think that there's a huge motivating force that powers this. That motivating force is mascots. And I think there's a bit of hypocrisy there when we have this type of behavior going on that is met, and rightfully so, met with a very strong reaction from Indigenous people and non-Indigenous people alike. But we don't see this nearly as strongly when we see it on any given day within the sports world. And we see it all the time, day after day, year after year, and very little is ever done about it. And though there has been some headway made with certain particular teams, there are still a lot of them out there, including local high school children's teams that have this type of imagery. And not only is a problem objectifying an entire group of people, mind you, with stereotypical imagery and stereotypical behavior, but also you have to look at the motivating force behind that, which is the fans. The fans tend to be the biggest problem with these types of things. I can't tell you how many times I've seen something that says scalp the Indians, or seen a Indian head on the end of a stake, all in the name of sports, all in the name of friendly competition. And what this has really done is lend longevity to certain type of racist stereotypes and sayings that we use every single day because it is socially acceptable. You hear things like off the reservation, you hear things like we're going to have a powwow, Indian giver. All these sayings are things that are specifically tied to a negative stereotype or are used to demean and dehumanize Indigenous people and trivialize Indigenous people. And though a lot of those things predate Native mascots, the acceptance of Native mascots and the acceptance of Native imagery has lent this, again, to extend well past what we consider to be socially acceptable for our time. A study done by a professor at the University of Michigan showed that exposing Indigenous youth to Native mascots, to negative stereotypes within mascots, and Native American imagery has led to increased in depression, suicidal tendencies, lower self-esteem, and lowered overall academic study. The power that this has been well documented, and yet we still widely accept it in one arena, but not the other. And one of the biggest resistances that we see within this conversation is the fact that people often say that not everyone agrees with them. Not all Indigenous people agree with this assessment, that there are studies done to show that not all Native American people agree with this. And it's true, as with every social conversation, you're going to have varying degrees of opinions. And though a lot of that data that they refer to is not entirely accurate.
Or it says that in 2004, a poll found that 90% of Native Americans did not find the name offensive.
Oh, the Annenberg report. Well, the funny thing about the Annenberg report is that it was conducted in Pennsylvania by self-identifying Indigenous people, which means it could have been anybody off the street that says, oh yeah, my great-great-great-grandmother was a Cherokee princess.
Come on, who would do that?
My great-great-grandfather's full-blood Cherokee Indian. Show of hands, who has Cherokee or any Native American? Brian, what do you got in you?
Cherokee, but I have no idea how much or little.
Right.
I'm actually 1/12.
1/12 Cherokee.
As 1/12 Cherokee, I am not offended.
That's a whole different conversation. There are nations that are okay with this. The difference is they use individual nations and individual tribal names for their mascot, such as the University of Utah Utes and the University of Florida State Seminoles. Those nations gave those permissions. But when you use a general term like Indians, Redskins, or Chiefs, that's way more inclusive and includes every single nation or anyone who identifies with that racial group. And the opinion of such is pretty lopsided when you take into account the people who are actually indigenous. So you can't really take a very small group of people and apply it to the whole. And that's really what we see. You also hear other groups of people that are named as mascots and they claim they don't have a problem with it. They often like to refer to the University of Notre Dame Fighting Irish, but again, there's a history behind that. It's an Irish Catholic school. And those particular people at that time gave that permission. It's not accurate and it's not okay. So the point of this is that this is a part of a bigger conversation that we need to have. And though we can hold specific individuals responsible all we want, that's not going to do a whole lot of good. We address the issue as a whole, or the root cause of this entire thing and why this thing exists. Something to think about.